why would conventional neo-Malthusian environmentalism lead to this? Why does it keep happening? And I just want to make it very, very explicit here. Neo-Malthusian limits to growth lifeboat politics inevitably leads to population control. And once you get to population control, that you will immediately at some point have people articulating, therefore we need immigration restrictions. There's a very logical line there. And secondly, these calls to traditional ways and local economies that retreat from global supply chains that you hear on the regular from all sorts of mainstream environmentalists. A retreat from global supply chains and return to traditional ways matches up, and thus from sort of cosmopolitan influence, they're ineluctably exclusionary. What really is the difference exactly between insisting on a border at the edge of your bioregion, which is what these mainstream environmentalists want, and calling for a harder border at the edge of your nation?
The encounter that this often the way that this encounter often happens on the left, as far as I see it, and correct me if I've mischaracterized this, but it's that you get a kind of more technocratic wing who say that, we need action on climate change immediately, and the, kind of more far left critics will retort, no, it's working class power first, and then we deal with the environmental issues. You can't short circuit to the environmental questions by through technocratic means. And I mean, I would try to find a way to say, well, can't we have both? But I guess I'm personally very
typical petty bourgeois compromise.
Yeah. No, but I mean, something like the Green New Deal proposes that basically, right? That you do have technical responses about the way that about energy production, for example, about energy transition, which are technical matters, but which are accompanied by at least a more social democratic approach to the economy, if not necessarily a kind of socialist transformation. But I mean, so, I'm just trying to, I guess, recognizing that there's this tension within left-wing discussions, and I maybe want to ask you, what's your proposition, and how do you resolve that one?
So just before Leigh answers, just to add something to the pot. I mean, it occurs to me, I think part of the problem is the other way. It's the other way around. It's a bit like what you were saying about Olivier Roy's theory of jihadism. It's nihilists looking for a hook on which to hang their nihilism. And I think that's a lot of the problem with the contemporary left, is that they're not actually left-wing in the traditional sense of desiring for humanity to transform itself in the process of improving its circumstances and emancipating itself. It's cynicism discussed with the contemporary world, and this is what leads to and this is the kind of, I think, what leads them to a particular the sympathy with Malthusianism, the unwillingness to purge Malthusianism from their accounts of the environment. And the general outlook. So it's, I think that it's the other way around. It's that's the way where it comes from.
Yeah, because I think that's uncharitable in calling it nihilistic. I mean, there's certainly nihilistic strains on the left. There's no doubt about that. But I think more generally, it's more that there's a certain a sort of soft liberal and technocratic approach to things, which wants to limit the worst excesses of capitalism, and doesn't see working class power as achievable or is even necessarily on the horizon, and so really just wants government to do some good things to make the world a bit of a nicer place. I think and I don't think that's cynical. I don't think that's nihilistic. I think it's just a very limited vision and probably a self-defeating one, because it won't get off the ground.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's technocratic, and it's a kind of green supranationalism that seems more likely, which is grounded in a kind of I don't know, a lack of faith in working class politics, which is not nihilistic. It's here's how to lock in some things that we don't want to have policy discussions on. It's not here's a system with no moral ideas.
But the green supranationalism isn't going to present itself as liberal or technocratic. It will be liberal and technocratic, but the green supranationalism will be presented as part of a genuinely radical left-wing social democratic agenda, because it will be draped in the mantle of the first New Deal. So, I mean, this is my critique of the Green New Deal. Isn't specifically linked to any policy which is packaged up in it, but the way in which it's politically legitimated, I think, is problematic. And so it will be technocratic, but it will be technocratic from a left-wing perspective rather than cast in kind of liberal terms. And I think that will leave you wrong-footed, Alex, because you will have no resource or no space from which to critique that perspective.
Because not that people weren't opposed to John McDonnell's ideas about reindustrialization and investment in the region, but these were sort of charity cases of feeling sorry for these people, and rather than going into those communities and saying, right, so there's some experts here. Let's work with so an anti-technocratic perspective is not anti-expertise. It's just saying non-rule by experts. Using experts well alongside trade unions and working class communities for themselves to come up with the best solutions, and trust in the fact that working class communities have such an amazing body of knowledge that they themselves can come up with what are some of the best solutions.